Full report on the Israeli Defense Minister, Whistleblower from 2021, adding to Grusch. Very important. These are samples from the book, The Universe Beyond the Horizon, by Haim Eshed, former head of the Israeli spy satellite program. Just an aside, these translations of this book and this interview based on this book have been very hard to find, and this book is impossible to find in an English translation. So this is a translated interview that was done and in 2020, I believe, and I want to just go through the salient points here. That's quite a long interview. Let's see if we can get started. Now, in this first section I'm going to cover here, he's talking about Skinwalker Ranch and portals in general, and the point he's making here, and you can pause this and read this, is that they're invisible to our naked eye, but in a multi-spectrum light, they are visible, kind of like a haze or a cloud, and when you illuminate them or look through a camera at these frequencies, you can see them. And so you shoot it in the whole spectrum of the cameras, you see radiation at all frequencies, it goes on. That's what he's talking about, the portal. You see how a transformative body comes out, a light comes out of at a frequency you can't see with the naked eye. And in fact, you see nothing, you look normally, but in camera at high frequencies, you see the body perform mutilations, cattle being mutilated, and so forth, which you don't see with your naked eye. And now, he was just making a point here about the difference. Now, Farsight, the remote viewers, and that's Farsight, as in seeing Farsight, they have a website. It's an interesting group. They have just come out, I believe it's the Panasonic G16, I'm not sure. It's 160 frame per second. Video DSLR, or actually it's a it doesn't have a shutter, it's a shutterless camera. Anyway, the point is, they have developed a technique, they say, using high shutter speeds and infrared imaging, which they can image UFOs. So, and they have a whole thing on their website about this, but it's a synchronicity here between them here in 23 and 2020, where this interview and book take place. Now he says, here's something like a cloud, like a drawing a ghost to children. It's an undefined amorphous cloud, and when you're looking at it through the multi-spectrum camera, you see the cow's body and everything, but with the naked eye, you see none of this happening. After the event, they run over to the field. They see the cow's body has been mutilated, but they didn't see it happen. Again, MIT professors, he says, and leading researchers have seen this and confirmed it, and everyone's shocked. So, anyway, just some input into Skinwalker Ranch there, talking about multispectral light, and this seems to be a key, and this could have something to do with the whole frequency and vibration, interdimensional aspects and so forth. But this is one of the main points Haim makes, and let's move on to the next one. Now, in this section of this interview, he just talks about how 5 years ago, had he have brought any of this up, he would immediately be considered crazy. But now people are listening. He says he's retired. He has his degrees, and I received my degrees and awards. I am honored at universities abroad, and even they're the trend changing and willing to talk about it. And this is the interesting quote. Even if in many places they still say, listen, make sure the elephant in the room stays in the room and do not quote us. So in other words, behind closed doors, people are taking him seriously and they are listening to him. Now, that last section was interesting because, when this report came out and this book came out, it was ridiculed and not taken seriously. But I just want to go through a couple things. Now, these italics here are questions that the interviewer were asking, but one of the responses he made when talking about technology transfer, yes, we have anti-gravity. And this is coming from a recently retired top military person from Israel. Yes, we have anti-gravity and other things. And now the interviewer asks him, why are they hiding it from us? And how can governments and armies in the world, how are they able to conceal this stuff? Now, here he makes some clarification on what's going on. Not all governments of the world have this information. There is a group of partners, the Americans, the Russians, the Japanese, the English, and the Chinese, and I would put the Canadians in there too. All coordinate at a level where it is still forbidden to publish, and those who ask not to publish are them. So the extraterrestrials ask them not to publish. And they are obviously in communication with the Americans, the Russians, the Japanese, the English, and the Chinese. And they all are coordinating on this topic at some level. It looks like under the direction of the EVs. Now, there is Dr. David Jacobs claims that under certain circumstances, EVs can exert control over the actions of others, and one wonders if this comes into play in all of this at some level. If they were to control in a stovepipe confidentiality world the top leader or leaders, top few, they might be able to control the whole effort, but he does not make this claim. And now, this is the interviewer. Who are they? The Galactic Federation. Is there such a thing? It exists. I wrote about it, even though it was perceived as a conspiracy theory. Now, this is also from one of my previous videos years ago, mentioned by Tom Armstrong in his book from the 70s. But lately, senior generals are also saying publish. So they want, these are Israeli generals, are saying publish the Galactic Federation news. Trump, now this is interesting and may have something to do with the targeting of Trump, not a political channel, but again, MJ12 wants to silence anyone who might be in a position to expose any of this to publish. And Trump was on the verge of finding out. So, Trump was on the trail of this. Maybe his downfall is based to that. That would be an outcome much like Nixon. And who knows, perhaps Trump will get convicted and pardoned like Nixon, with a deal getting him to be quiet. Wouldn't that be something? History repeating itself. I do believe MJ-12 through the CIA, and I'm working on another video on this, did out Nixon, because Nixon wanted the Kennedy assassination files. Getting off the track here. And some mainstream professors are also saying, guys, tell all. So the Galactic Federation, some of the white hat guys, I guess if you want to call them that, are saying, get the news out there. But the aliens in the Federation say, wait, let's first calm down. Do not post, because you'll see what's happening to you. You're still fighting each other. You will destroy yourselves. So again, the aliens are the ones that are in control of disclosure, not the humans. Okay. Now, the interviewer asks, why not come and talk to us directly, the aliens? Why don't they just come and talk to us directly? And I'm going to read this because there's some interesting, because it will. Now, the question in my mind, and I think I mentioned this later, is, has this Galactic Federation done this before? Do they know what will happen? It sounds like they may have experience. Anyway, that's just my conjecture. Okay, this is what Haim says. Because it will create panic and collapse humanity. What will happen? The markets will collapse. There will be nothing to eat. People will become cannibals. Hospitals will be shut down. And all the dark passions will come out. It may be the end. So, Linda Moulton Howe talks about an end of the world scenario. I disagree, but they may have experience releasing this information to other societies. And the last reason is they're not interested in the information. So, the humans don't care. A lot of them don't care. On the contrary, and they are not interested in it, okay? On the contrary, the Ebens follow all the time, and there are a lot of reports. But after the nuclear events in the world, they monitor the stations and nuclear weapons bases. I'm willing to give you things written, and there were already things they prevented. I just watched some information on the Project Starfish. They are concerned, when they did the atmospheric explosions of nuclear warheads, they downed a number of UFOs. So I think we all have to keep in mind that this is a self-serving righteousness, because their crafts are also vulnerable to the electromagnetic pulse of atomic weapons. Know that it's not just like the Russians in Pigs. He said Bay of Pigs did not use nuclear weapons. Someone neutralized it. So he's saying here that the aliens are involved in stopping a nuclear exchange having to do with the Bay of Pigs. And, there may be something to this. Castro was gung-ho about using nuclear weapons. There were tactical nuclear weapons on the ground in Russia before the big ones came in on the ships, and Castro wanted to use them. He was willing to sacrifice Cuba, and those could have reached Miami. So, anyway, they say that the aliens played a role in stopping that, possibly. It's not mentioned. This is the first I've heard of that. I have no doubt humanity would have already destroyed itself. They want to say to humanity, children, calm down. And let's move on to the next section. Again, the interviewer asked, why don't they just come down and do disclosure? The UFOs is asked not to publish that they are here. Humanity is not ready yet, and I'll just read this. There will be a great rampage of everyone, and what the Inquisition did to guys like Galileo and Copernicus will return against the alien provocateurs, I guess. They want to make us sane first and understand. They waited until today for humanity to evolve and reach a point where we could even understand what space, and there's some dots there. There were some other comments on that trailed off. So they feel that we have reached a certain level here, according to Haim, for some sort of revelation. And what they say is that, first of all, let's stand that the stock markets will not fail, that there will be no rampage, that humanity will calm down a level. So again, have EVs done this before? Are they remote viewing the future? Are they certain this outcome will take place? And there's a good chance it may. The point is, they're in control yet again. So Haim is indicating that we've relinquished a lot of control, basically all the control over this topic, to the aliens as far as releasing information. Now, this is a small snippet of a quote here. Now, this, I believe, refers to the meeting of Eisenhower, supposedly, and I'm working on a video on this, at the air base adjacent to White Sands missile test range, where JFK also visited. Now, supposedly, it's not supposed, I think there's a lot of hard evidence on this, and eyewitness information about Air Force One and a UFO meeting at this out at the end of the runway where no one was around, and they say that Eisenhower went into a UFO. It has been implied that he signed contracts. I cannot prove it. I understand it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but the understanding is that the Galactic Federation has 9 elements of advanced aliens of various kinds. So 9 elements who have signed a contract with us to do experiments here. And that involves, abductions and genetic experiment and hybrids and so forth. Now, there are grays involved in that. And, Dr. Kathleen Turner, PhD, who's deceased, wrote a couple of great books on, how these abductions are a criminal act. Now, there are so many different races of Ebens, it's hard to know which are involved in which, but this, I think, is a reference again to Ike meeting a disc and this was in 55, I believe, at the Air Force Base adjacent to White Sands. So this confirms that as well. A lot of the stuff Haim says confirms a lot of things. He worked with the DIA and the CIA and Israeli intelligence, and they have tentacles all over the world between those three. And he would know this. I think, and again, what's his motivation for lying at this point? To sell a book, but, the book isn't even printed in English, so I think he wants to disclose some of this stuff. Anyway, that's an interesting quote there as well. And moving on to another topic, Haim's talking about why they come here. There are resources here. There is water here in quantities that are nowhere else. all kind of vegetation, all kind of animals, the ocean. So these are unique to Earth. In Ingo Swann's book, Penetration, which is really good, in the opening of that book, and I do believe that's a factual book, and he talks about being taken by a 3-letter agency to a remote area, unknown remote area, he thinks it's Canada, where they watch a UFO come and hover over a lake and take up large quantities of water and leave. So there are all kind of reasons. There's water here in quantities that are nowhere else. There's some conjecture that there are some propulsion units that use water in some fashion. Perhaps not as a fuel, but as a medium, something like that. You have to look into that on your own. We are their petri dish. They too are researching, trying to understand the whole fabric of the universe. They want us as helpers. To this day, the petri dish has not been stabilized, but it is estimated we were reaching a stage where they can contact us. Religion accepts their existence. The Vatican has already announced it wants to baptize them. The Vatican played a role in getting one of the first UFO crash retrievals to the U.S. from Rome pre-World War II. So the Vatican does know what's going on. The UN has appointed an ambassador for foreign affairs. And it brings us closer to them, okay? So, again, he talks about being ready and so forth. Let's move on to the next question here. Okay, in this next section, this is kind of shocking. The interviewer says, come on, in the present age, there is no such thing would have been kept secret. No such a thing would have been kept secret. He's talking about the alien presence. Yes, it was kept secret. Killed a lot along the way, everyone who opened their mouths. So that goes a long way. And I think this is RFK, JFK, Marilyn Monroe, Dorothy Kilgallen, who knows how many UFO researchers and so forth, and Colby of the CIA died mysteriously, saying he was going to expose a alternate energy source and so forth. So Haim is confirming all of that as well. Now, these are just some general quotes. Moving on to another topic, stars that form, things that accumulate. Listen, space is Times Square on July 4th. Space is a carnival. He's talking about the abundance of life in the universe. There are thousands of stars with conditions similar enough to ours, and serious scientists have identified and documented dozens of life forms, even though the mainstream does not accept it. So this is some secret work that's going on that he spilled the beans on. So the closest to us, so he says that serious scientists have documented dozens of life forms. So there you go. You had 9 in the council and you have dozens here. I mean, there's a lot. The closest to us are what we call grays, or gray creatures with large eyes with them. Suppose some of them came from the Pleiades, planets that have living conditions we know about. We can't get there, but they can get to us because they're much more advanced. So, there you go. Admitting the grays, they're in the Pleiades. Times Square on the 4th of July is the universe. A lot of dozens of life forms have been identified by serious scientists that haven't been released to the general public. There is an underground base. Now, this is Michael Salla has just written a book on this, and a lot of these super soldiers that are coming out that have done a 20 and back program This confirms a lot of what they're saying. There's an underground base in the depths of Mars, and their representatives, and also American astronauts. So there are aliens and American astronauts operating on Mars. These are the 20 and back soldiers you hear about. According to the 20 and back soldiers, there's several races, one of an insect race and one of a native race, and they all live underground. And then you have other aliens and their compatriots with the U.S. Space Force, and they all have areas of territory on Mars and so forth. You can go to the 20 and back soldier stories to read more about this, but this Haim seems to confirm all of that from his own experience here. Now, I found this very interesting. This is about the first. There is a description of what I think he's talking about, his first contact here, and then this second section is about their travel technology, which I'm not sure if we have or not. We certainly have the anti-gravity technology. This, I believe, is his description of how first contact is going to take place. The large craft, the mothership, is almost the size of a small town. So that is going to appear. Small town-sized spacecraft. Small spacecraft emerge from it, most of them robotic or manned by intelligent robots. The android Greys would be an example of this, or some other type of robots, or their drone discs. At first, they will send such robots, primitive to them, or they'll broadcast a message we'll have to decipher. So that's how it's going to happen. A large spacecraft is going to appear. This sounds like a theme to a movie. And small, either drones or so forth, are going to emerge, and they may send a message as well. So that's interesting. I think that's a premiere, that's a teaser, a sizzle roll of how the in-person disclosure is going to take place. So, large space craft, almost the size of a small town. I think we're going to have to be ready for that. Maybe they're right. Now, they're talking about travel here, and I do believe this confirms everything Bob Lazar has said. Talking about how they travel. No, they're more means of propulsion. No, they have a method of producing a bubble that neutralizes space-time, and the tool does not move. Space moves. And this is consistent with general relativity. This guy is a tech guy, engineer, physicist / rocket scientist. Take, for example, an ant wants to move from one page to another. Let's say I folded the page in two. That's how you fold time-space as well. This is a concept that's been bandied around for years and years and years, and it's a common concept. It's a bit of complex physics. Propulsion is based on dark energy. 25% of the universe is dark matter, which allows time-space to be distorted and reach other galaxies in no time. You can create a tiny black hole. That's what Switzerland's particle accelerator does. It's a technology that sounds like science fiction, but are out of the question. So the point is, they're creating small black holes. Bob Lazar stated that when he was looking, if you listen to his testimony about the UFO, the sports model he worked on, there were 3 gravity directing tubes at the bottom of the spacecraft that aimed the gravity waves he felt, gravity guides. And he said when the power was turned on in that tube, if you looked in it, it created a small black hole. He knew what a small black hole would look like because he's a physicist and so forth. But I believe that this verifies what Bob Lazar said, and it jives with the Area 51 information. So that's interesting. Another note, I have the Thunderbolts project listed on my channel links on YouTube. Thunderbolts has an electric model of the universe. And there are Birkeland currents. It's a very fascinating new concept of the universe and how the planets formed and so forth. But they talk about Birkeland currents and large filaments of electrical current running throughout. The whole universe is connected by these filaments. They say the sun is an electric object. It is electrically charged. It's at the end of one of these filaments. But the point is, there is some speculation in that group that interstellar travel takes place along these electrical filaments. So, not a physicist or an engineer, you can think about that. But small black holes come up not only in what Haim is saying, but also what Bob Lazar said about the gravity tubes on the sports model at Area 51. So he's confirmed that as well. Now, this next small section up top there, he's talking about, the day after disclosure or whatever. And I disagree. I do believe there is a spiritual / religious component to all of this. And one day I'm going to put up my model of the universe, but I do disagree. I do believe there is, and a lot, Jacques Vallée and a lot of other people say that there is, there's another component to this. And I do believe that component is religion. I do think it is religion, or the concept of religion as we see it. And what will happen when they come to us? Humanity will connect to the fabric of the universe. And once we connect, our science will leap thousands of years, and this is with all of these developments coming out that are in the black projects now. So that's going to happen instantaneously, thousands of years of advancements in science. Again, coming out of the black projects, we will be capable of anti-gravity. We will be able to move between star systems. I think we can do that now, and I think that, again, this is all the stuff that's going to come out of these black projects, okay? Now, this is the other thing he says will happen. Religion will lose the control it has today. Aliens do not believe in religion. They believe in deciphering the fabric of the universe. He is math. He's math, or EBs are math, the physics of the universe. So they don't believe in a creation myth or any of that. Now, this has tones of an AI-based species, maybe. I've understood that some people feel that, there is an AI species that is a threat. Carrie Cassidy has mentioned this and others. And evidently they worship math or technology. And it sounds a lot like this. And so aliens do not believe in religion, according to him. Now, these are the aliens in the Galactic Council, and this may be all aliens. And as I said, now, separate from the whole alien others, there is, in my opinion, a spiritual or some type of other component to this as well. I'm working on a video on this. There's been some studies done on this. it's an interesting topic. But anyway, he says religion will end. So interesting. You know, we do have trickster. There is a tradition of trickster gods or trickster entities that present, false narratives. Could be one of them. Maybe not. This is their belief system, according to Haim, and he seems to be in the know. Now, in this section, he's starting to talk more about the aliens, and at first he's talking about the physical, and then he's talking about the concept of, I would say, an alien soul. They don't say a soul here, they say consciousness, and consciousness and the soul may be the same thing, or they may be two different things. The soul may be along with the genetics of the human, may be unique to humanity, Earth humanity. I am leaning towards that myself, and there's a number of reasons. I'll go through that in another entity. And there's plenty of abduction work and others about the fascination of these EVs with souls and the concept of a soul and so forth. But let me move forward here. No, they have all kinds of shapes. They function. The function of the star around which they cluster, and some of them can make shape changes. So what he's saying here is, how they look depends on, did a supernova explode nearby, and it's a function of how big the planet is and how heavy the gravity is and so forth. By the way, we talked about water earlier, how Earth is unique in the amount of water it has, according to Haim. Earth is also unique, at least in our solar system. We have the heaviest soil, per square meter of any of the planets in our solar system. That's also very unique. So they are a function of the star which they cluster. And he's talking about here, there are shapeshifters as well. And this may get into this spiritual end of the spectrum on this. But again, I'm working on another video on this, but let's not move on. So many different shapes and sizes of EVs, and some are shapeshifters. Now here he's talking about here's an example you'll understand. Points to a heavy wooden table. It's a table, yes, it's made of atoms, and if the nucleus of the atom here on this table, do you know where the electron is? And he's saying maybe Rosh Pina, these are other cities in Israel, maybe in the middle of nothing. It's quantum theory. The material is empty. So he's talking about spooky actions at a distance, I guess you call this. But we too are energy. Even when we die, we do not die because we're made of molecules and atoms, and we move to another energy. You connect back to the cosmic fabric, to the web, to the connection of consciousness. You are consciousness. So this again points to all the present study in consciousness and how it plays a role in all this. And I think that's a kind of some would say going back to source, and the idea of a soul. I think the idea of a soul might be a little bit different, but consciousness and soul are definitely connected. There's one guy said the soul consists of a quantum fluid in the base of the brain. Interesting. Anyway, no, forget it. The consciousness will not die. All that accumulated is added. It goes to the same network. And everything you have gained in your life, the personality, the total of what you have gone through, it accumulates into this fabric, this web of consciousness throughout the universe. Stephen Hawking also realized that our consciousness adds to the fabric of the universe. We are building blocks a step in the way. So, anyway, talking about that I think what the point he's making here is that the EBs also have consciousness, and that their consciousness is like our consciousness. I think that there are differences as well, but he's talking about the sameness at that level, I believe. Then he goes on to say here, biologists will tell you nonsense. It's all chemical and electrical activity in the brain that creates consciousness, and I believe it's been proven that consciousness is not local. Bring me proof. Do you know that this is all the biggest debate in science, consciousness? They have not summed it up, and they're a phenomenon that cannot be explained by electrical activity in the brain. I do believe this is true. They've studied people with, missing half a brain who still experience consciousness. If it was purely based on the electrical signals and this chemistry in the brain, how could that exist? How could that be whole with half of the brain missing? Anyway, that's his little speech on consciousness here, and I think he's making the point that EBs share consciousness and that we're all connected in this consciousness web. He believes that Netanyahu is not in the know on aliens, so he's talking about who's read in. So Netanyahu, not read in. Again, you hear this talk all about American presidents and the need to know, and how some people just don't know. And he says here, not only are presidents not read, most countries are isolated from it. He says, and it's better this way. So, there you go. It's still, and I think this is, again, at the direction of the aliens. I do believe the aliens are in control of who knows and who doesn't. I don't think the humans, and, the question is, is this mind control? That's the question. Now, he has some comments on some current events, I guess you would call it, he's on the global warming and so forth and the environment. I'm disappointed. Listen, humanity will not survive here if someone does not take care of the environment. I will give us less than 50 years. I think he's correct in that. I think global warming is an issue, although all of the planets in our solar system, I have learned, are experiencing global warming as well, but that doesn't mean it's not an existential threat to the Earth. He talks about commercial space travel, such as Blue Origin. He says it's not going to amount to anything. It's a hobby for the rich. So it's not commercial space travel that is going to make any profound changes, according to him. Now, here he talks about asteroid mining. Now, what is really interesting is asteroid mining. They have expensive materials in huge quantities. Gold and platinum have already sunk to the center of the globe on Earth. And the asteroids, they are still on the surface. You don't have to land on them. You can just reach and anchor next to them and cut out what you want. And Elon Musk, and I'm sure Elon Musk is thinking about this, and Jeff Bezos, again, are already planning it. It will be a new gold rush. Now, I just watched an interview with, I think it's Senator Warner's son, and he intimated, he didn't come out and say it, but he said it but didn't say it, that MJ-12 or the cabal, I don't want to say MJ-12 anymore, I'm going to quit saying MJ-12. Let's call it the cabal. They already have been doing asteroid mining for a while. It's undoubtedly what they're using to finance part of their activities anyway, and this is also part of the wealth generation they want to keep to themselves by not doing disclosure. But according to Warner's son, and that's a very good, it's on Gaia, he wrote a book, last name Warner, very interesting interview. He spills the beans on a lot of stuff he learned from his father, who was a senator. His father said, by the way, leave MJ-12 alone. They know what they're doing. He said, don't talk about them. Yeah, well, there you go. I'm not talking about them anymore. Now he talks about quantum computers. I estimate that quantum computers will reach a level that transcends human capacity in terms of consciousness. So they're going to become conscious. It will be super consciousness. They will be smarter than us and much more significant and more significant than it is now. Okay, so there, it's an exponential improvement in consciousness, and the capacity of the computer will advance human consciousness in turn. So that's the end of the relevant. He talked about a lot of different things in this article. This interview. This interview is very hard to find. This has been translated from Israeli. I have plucked out the relevant parts. I am going to flash try to go to a link in this to show you what this article looks like, so you can get the information from the browser, the web address, and also maybe just some short footage of Haim. Okay, well, disclosure.colorado. I'm going to just go down here so you can find this on your own. This is what you want to search for. Okay. And this interview was done on January 3, 2021, during the pandemic. There you go. There's a URL for the original Hebrew source, and it was translated by Google Translate. So you have to kind of account for that, but this is where you can find it. Search for this, and it's this Full Disclosure Colorado Springs, Truth, Technology, and Equality Through Disclosure, and that was on December 2021. This interview took place. Now I'm just going to play a clip. I'll put there's a link to this in this video, just so you can hear his voice. This is what he looks like. Hold on. This is from TSC Technology, is the YouTube channel.
To convey to you the blessing and creativity of Israel's space program, with a long cooperation with India in space in different projects for over 2 decades, and continuing with the 75 Student Satellite Mission 2022. And continuing with the 75 Student Satellite Mission 2022. I'm Professor Eshed, former head of space defense in Israel, and as mentioned, former chairman of the new Space Committee of Israel Academy of Science. As we all feel now, the world today suffers from a severe variating pandemic that teaches us human beings an important lesson of humility and compassion for the other.
And that's what Haim sounds like. That is, you can do this, search Professor Haim Eshed, CU short, and that video will come up. There, you can pause this. There is the URL to this interview to find it exactly. And this is NASA's response to his book and this interview. One of NASA's key goals in the search for life in the universe, although we have yet to find signs of extraterrestrial life, NASA is exploring the solar system and beyond to help us answer fundamental questions, including whether we are alone in the universe. From studying water on Mars, probing promising ocean worlds such as Enceladus and Europa, and looking to biosignatures in the atmosphere of planets outside our solar system, NASA's science missions are working together with a goal to find unmistakable signs of life beyond Earth. And so that is a total rebuff to Haim. It's a total denial stonewall against everything he said here. So, okay, and to close this out, I'm just going to play a brief snippet from Michael Salla. This is Michael Salla. He's a esteemed UFO researcher. He's come out with a new book, oddly enough, about a super soldier on Mars, operating on Mars among other locations. And I'm just going to play a quick quote from him on the release of this book and this interview.
So what he has revealed is that agreements were reached with extraterrestrials. He says that there is a Galactic Federation, and as the consequence of these deals, studies were done on human genome, on our history, on our culture. The extraterrestrials were very interested in us, that a joint facility was established on Mars, which is run by the extraterrestrials along with Americans. And what he is saying is that recently President Trump was on the verge of revealing all of this, but that the extraterrestrials, the Galactic Federation, said that the time wasn't right yet, that humanity hasn't yet reached that stage of technological sophistication where we could handle any revelation about the existence of extraterrestrials without having a societal meltdown.
And not a political channel. I'll just close out with that comment on Trump. And again, interesting to think about perhaps an angle of the attacks on Trump, and it's very reminiscent of Nixon being convicted. Now, being forced out of office. Could Trump be? I believe Nixon absolutely was a victim of the cabal. We're going to call it the cabal, and they forced him out because of he was insisting on seeing the Kennedy assassination files. And this is also related to Watergate. You can see I have a video coming out, part 3 of the MJ-12 and the Kennedy assassination, that ties all this together. Could Trump be the next in the last in a long line of victims of the cabal over this disclosure issue? Interesting. Let me just propose one potential outcome. Not political channel. I have no political views on this, but just think about it. If you want to go the route Nixon went, here's what you do. You cut the deal. You tell them, look, you promise not to disclose any of this, and because he has said the things I know about space. That's what Trump said. So could he be pardoned as part of a plea deal to keep quiet about the Space Force if he's convicted of these charges? This is the kind of thing the cabal would do. Anyway, okay, this is UAP. I hope you like this video.